It's Alex Rufer here on the Unused Subs, and I definitely will not be saying I'm the best roofer ever. So cheers, Spoons.
Even though some of us here believe it.
DeVries into the night sky. Duncan with a double-fisted punch. Mai's going to keep that in. Rogerson! Hands go to head for Logan Rogerson.
There it is, the disallowed goal that will weigh on the minds of Auckland FC players, coaches, staff, fans for many a month to come. Was it rightly or wrongly ruled a disallowed goal?
For me, I see one angle, I'm like, okay, cool, that could have drifted out. I see another angle, I'm like, oh, there's no chance that it gets anywhere but on the line. The thing, though, that frustrates me is the assistant referee is allowed to make his call. He uses his discretion, his judgment, fine. He thinks it's gone out. VAR, from what I can understand, and we didn't hear this in the commentary box, but VAR took all of 10 seconds to confirm the decision. So if they've got a conclusive angle or if they've got some technology that allows them to be that decisive, do the referee and the assistant referees a favour and just release it.
Yeah, just let us all see it. Yeah. I mean, the best angle that I've seen was the reverse side, which was taken from
you were sitting quite close to the,
Yeah, that's right. The reverse angle, because obviously the broadcast side is the west stand. So on the east side, there was a camera angle from maybe just a punter, I don't know.
Yep.
And you can see what I deem to be quite clearly the ball going out of play, then coming back into play over the top of the crossbar before Logan heads it home. So I'm not going to say that I'm happy, but I'm confident to...
Is this solace for you?
Yeah, to say that the officials have got it right on this occasion. The assistant referee is very, very close to the line. So he's in a wonderful position to be able to make that call. And if VAR has the supporting vision, then I think the right call was made. The disappointing thing, can I call it disappointing, after the game was watching and listening to Steve Corica's reaction. And I understand that in the heat of the moment, you're going to be pissed off, you're going to be devastated and disappointed and all of that. But for him to just out and out call the decision wrong, I think was probably a bit much.
Having been in the position that Steve was in, and I know I've been the same in the past with certain games, the goal's been scored. The assistant referee has effectively taken a goal off Auckland. No matter how fast it's happened, the ball's in the back of the net, there's a flag up. What the coaching staff, I think, or at least from my perspective, wanted to see was clear evidence that it had gone out. And it wasn't communicated. And I just remember the interview we did with Steve, and he said he went over to talk to them. I imagine he was emotional but rational and wanting to understand how the decision had been made. And when no communication comes back, and this is, I think, a fault, I think, with how we officiate games at the moment, there's no explanation, and there's no explanation to the crowd either. So the decision's made, and I like what rugby do. They have the referee stand in the middle of the field, the communication with the VAR occurs so that everyone can hear it at home in the stadium, and at least then you get closure around the decision-making process and the integrity of it. So to your point, yeah, I can understand at home you've seen something, you're like, okay, cool, let's move on. For Steve, it's a grand final that's been taken away from him. So I can understand why he's emotional.
Yeah. When I think about the way that Guillermo has delivered the cross, he's come around the ball with his left foot, and so there's obviously going to be a curvature of that delivery, right?
I love describing these things, by the way.
A natural arc.
Get quite American. There's a curvature of the ball. Yeah.
There's a natural arc that's going to occur. And for the ball to drop just not even a metre out from the goal, from that position, I think you have to admit that there would have been the ball swing out of play. But look, they came agonisingly close to a first ever grand final on New Zealand soil for this country.
It hurts.
So agonisingly close. But you know what? Before the season began, before they kicked a ball in anger, if somebody had have come up to me and said, you know what, Auckland FC is going to take silverware away in their first season and they're going to be a game away from a grand final, I think in isolation you go, I'll take that.
Where do I sign?
I'll take that. But unfortunately, they gave us almost like a Nottingham Forest-esque ride to that eventuality, in that they were so lofty. So they were up the top end of the table the whole time. And, you know, Nottingham Forest, they drift out of Champions League calculations. And even though they finished 7th, you go, oh, man, what might have been? Well, hang on. Last year, you were 4th from bottom. And if someone says to Nottingham Forest, hey, we're going to give you European football, you take that, right? So I think all in all, they've done an outstanding job.
Can I jump in with some ways to quantify this?
Of course you can.
So first off, I was doing an interview, a couple of interviews on Sunday, and the producer, while I was waiting to go on air, she said, I've got a problem. I've got 2 10-year-old kids at home, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they have been replaying this decision all morning. I think as a family, we've watched it 20 times. She said, is this normal? I said, yeah. You've now got football fans.
That's right.
The despair, the injustice, but more to the point, the passion. And this speaks to the connection that Auckland have managed to facilitate and to put roots down into the community. And I've got to commend them, because they went and they found their community. They ensured that people knew that they could support this team, knew where to look, all that good stuff. It's resulted in 22,000 shirts being sold, 255,000 people through the gate, an aggregate TV audience, I think this is for Auckland games, of close to 1.5 million.
Yeah, that's
really
phenomenal.
Impressive stuff. 575 minutes before they conceded a goal, an unbeaten run of 14 games, and to your point, the first piece of silverware by a New Zealand team in the A-League.
Yeah.
In fact, ever in Australian competitions. That is remarkable. Now, they fell over at the last hurdle. That's fuel. That's motivation. We heard Steve talk about that in the post-match interview. They've got something to aspire to for next year, and they have got this motivation to put into a jar and to turn it into fuel.
You talk about the numbers just quickly before we wrap this up and get Alex Rufer involved. I'm very keen to hear from him. The numbers of people going to the games and buying shirts and watching on television. I feel as though football in Auckland, in New Zealand, is no longer a dirty word. I think back to when I was a teenager and coming through the grades, representing Auckland, 14s, 15s, 16s. I was laughed at. Why are you playing football?
Yeah.
You pussy, you poofter, all the names under the sun.
All the homophobic shit.
Yeah, exactly. You copped it week after week. I remember going to a school assembly and being presented an award for achievements with Auckland under 15 or something like that, and people laughed. Now fast forward to present day, and it's like 30 years on, probably. But it's so good to see that we have come so far as a society that we can support a team, and supporting a football team in this country and in this city is actually acceptable now, and it's encouraged now. And you're seeing young kids wear Auckland FC jerseys. And obviously, for years and years, we've seen people wear Wellington Phoenix kit as well. But there's this huge surge in acceptability and support. And it's all to do with Auckland FC and what they've done to drum up that support and how they've gone about business on the field. And long may it continue, because we don't want football to become a dirty word ever again.
I think 2 points on that. First is representation. We see Auckland in Auckland FC. So we've got the imports, there's the Aussies there, but of the Kiwi contingent, Alex Paulson of South African background, Nando Peinecker, Dutch background, so that European migration, Jesse Randall-Pakeha. There is Pacifica representation in Cam Howison. Max Mata is Māori and Cook Islander. That is representing Auckland. It is not the 10-pound poms that everyone assumed it used to be.
Yeah.
Second part, relevance. We've talked about the connection down into the community. The connection up there is there as well. Alex Paulson on his way to Bournemouth, from what we're hearing. He's potentially not hanging around in Auckland for season number 2. The other part is that we know that these players are going to the World Cup. They're going to have a seat at the highest table. So you've got that connection that goes upwards into the food chain, onto the global stage. To your point, it's not a dirty word now. It's relevant. It is globally relevant.
Yeah. And you know what? I think what we're going to see over the next few years is that football, not only is it no longer a dirty word, rugby and other sports are going to fall by the wayside because everybody's going to be swept away by this football movement.
Hope so. Hope so. We've got to execute.
Yeah, got to execute. And we've got to bring in Alex Rufer.
Yep.
Roofs, after the weekend, I can't really think of a better person to talk to about the feelings and the emotions that might be running through the players and the staff for Auckland FC, given your Wellington Phoenix did exactly what they did just a year ago. So can you transplant us, if you will? What are the feelings, what are the emotions that you and your teammates experienced once Victory knocked you guys out of the semi-finals last year?
Oh, look, massive disappointment, obviously. I think Auckland obviously winning the league in their first season, I think is, a massive achievement. But yeah, massive disappointment, and obviously something that will hurt them for a while, yeah.
Do you like to sit in that disappointment, or is it very methodical, professional? You've experienced it, you just shelve it, move on?
It's a tough one. I think every sort of occasion is different. I think obviously everyone has their personal way of dealing with, setbacks or negatives. But especially after the semi-final last year, for me personally, I was pretty down. But I'm very lucky that I've got my dad to lean on when I am feeling down or upset about something, and obviously he's been there, done that. So he really helps me when I feel like I need someone to talk to. But again, I try as best as possible just to think, next game, next training.
Every time we hear a cliche like that, next game, next training, I want to dive down into it. And I think as well, we'll jump on into the penalty in a second. But is that a necessary function of a footballer, that although you can feel down, you need to be focused on the next thing basically within 48 hours?
I definitely think so. I think you can't dwell on it too much. I think the beauty of football, and everyone will tell you, is that after a loss or after a poor performance, you've always got the week following to make things right. And although the semi-final was the last game of our season for the Phoenix that year, we had national team to look forward to. So my focus, as quick as possible, was to actually focus on that. And I was in training for a few weeks leading into that, and just tried to forget about it as quick as possible. Yeah.
Not everybody's got a former international rep as a father. So what does Shane impart to you, like when you're feeling down?
Oh, anyone that knows my dad knows he's a pretty blunt sort of person, and he can also
He's given
be a
me
bit of
feedback before, Roos.
I'd look forward to hearing that. No,
we'll deal with you first, Roofs, and then we'll get to Spoon.
Pretty blunt, pretty straight up, and he just says to me to, like I said, just really focus on the next game, be proud of what happened, be proud of the season, or be proud of what you did, and but also always try to be the best you can be. So you can't dwell on that, but always try to look and be better. So he's always said that to me throughout my whole career, and even when I was a youngster, it was like I felt like I was just hearing the same things over and over again, which was so frustrating. But to be fair, it was definitely advice that helped massively.
All right, Spoon.
Yes.
Tell us what blunt advice he gave you. Get better.
I think it was one time
Catch the ball
in the Manawatu.
Yeah, catch the ball.
Literally,
be better.
that was it. He's like, "What are you doing? You've got to be stronger there. Just catch the ball." And it's as easy as that. But I think it's why, in this situation, if you aren't used to the high-end professional football that Shane and Winton have been involved in, you can take that as a bludgeoning. It's not. It's the simplicity of playing football. And he was right. In this situation, I've punched it. I've put pressure on my team because I didn't get it clear. And he's like, near post ball, just go and catch it. Yeah. But it also changes your mindset. You get confidence from that, Roos, because you're like, oh, that's what I should be doing. Instead of thinking about everything that might go wrong, you're like, okay, cool, this is my job in this situation. Great. Next time, I'm going to focus on that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. He's given me some advice sometimes where I've actually just wanted to hit him. especially when, someone...
By the way, just to explain it, I didn't go looking for the advice, Roofs. He came and found me after the game.
Well, I can't remember what game it was, but someone got past me and put a cross in, and I think they nearly scored or something like that. And I remember after the game, he said, "Oh, what did you learn?" And I didn't really have an answer. And he said, "Well, when I was a player," because he was obviously a defender or he played midfield sometimes, he'd say, I learned pretty quickly in my career that it was either the ball or the man that got past me, but never both. And I remember thinking,
I like that.
that's, how can I argue that, So, yeah.
That's where growing up a roofer, which I feel is a reality TV show, is a good thing because you get the benefit of that IP, the experience of them. What was it like as well growing up as a roofer? Because I imagine there's a lot of weight in the name. Was that heavy at times?
I didn't really feel it, I don't think, when I was younger. I think when you're younger, you're quite oblivious and quite naive to all of that sort of stuff, and I was always playing and enjoying my football. I probably felt it a little bit when I signed professionally because everyone sort of thought straight away was, oh, he's a roofer, he must be this or he must be that. And although you try and think or you act as if you're bulletproof, I do think it probably was quite tough for me to handle for probably a good year or so. But I was lucky because when I came into the Phoenix, I had, some really good heads around me, some older experienced lads that, helped me. And yeah, but since then, it's not really played a sort of any sort of role, to be honest.
And just staying with the roofer whānau for a second, there's obviously you've got a twin brother Lee. Caleb is up here in Auckland, your cousin. We've heard about Ollie Sale and how they almost destroyed each other, the 5 Sale boys, and a couple of them got put through the walls.
Yeah, throwing oil fin heaters in fights.
He broke a club over Tim's head. He
broke his nose, right?
I think. Yeah, we'll have to check in with Pippa about the details of that one. Backyard football between you three, at least. What was that like?
Well, to be fair, we had, so obviously there's Dad, Winton, and my auntie Donna, and all of them had 2 boys each, and we're all from the age, we're all similar ages. So I think the youngest is 26 and oldest is Caleb, being, I think Caleb's 32 now. So whenever we had Easter or Christmas or, birthdays and we're all together, we'd have, 6 teenagers and Shane and Winton in these games, and they were pretty intense, and you could see pretty quickly that, no one wanted to lose. And, even Dad and Winton, who are, now they were well retired, and, they like to think they're calm. You could see why that they had good careers, because they still had so much competitiveness. And I can tell you now, there was a few bad tackles flying about.
Oh, God, give us one. Please give us one. Has Shane cut Winton in half post-Christmas lunch?
No, it was actually my brother, Lee. He's quite aggressive, and Caleb, Winton's boy, was running through on goal, and obviously the fields are quite small, and I think Lee's team was losing, and he's just 2-foot Caleb from behind, and honestly, how he didn't break his leg is a miracle. But yeah, there was plenty of tackles like that. Even Josh, Winton's other boy, Josh, Winton obviously had so much quality, and he was so strong. He'd just push everyone off him, but Josh 2-foot him from behind, but then Winton just gets up as if nothing happened, so that probably annoyed him even more, But yeah, some good games, some real enjoyable games, yeah.
Jacob mentioned growing up roofer being a reality TV show. You could have sold tickets to this. You could have broadcast it online or something. Like, people would pay good
clash.
money. Yeah, exactly. Like, which roofer will survive? Now, that's the tagline for this extravaganza of football in the roofer household.
That's a great idea, but, all the boys, say to me, oh, you should do a roofer's reels, so like a fishing show. So, we all love our fishing too, so I'd probably prefer to do something like that.
Yeah, that could be the crossover. Remember Lee Hart and Jason Hoyt? They did the Screaming Reels. So it could be Roofers Reels meets Screaming Reels. And funnily enough, I'm glad that you brought it up, and Jacob was talking about this before we got started as well. Logan Rogerson brought up a story a few weeks back of how when he's with you cruising around in the car, you don't pay attention to what is going on. You're just looking at the waves and thinking, we need to get the rods out and go fishing. Now, is that true? This is the opportunity for you to defend yourself. And, do you neglect your friends in terms of conversation in the motor vehicle while you're scanning the waves for fish?
Okay, so it's true about the fact the rods were in the back, and they were always in the back, especially when I was younger. But the fact that there was no chat, that is a complete lie. Even you can ask Tom Doyle about it, because Doyley, when we used to, obviously when he was at the Phoenix, he used to like a bit of fishing. So he'd pick me up or I'd pick him up. We'd have the rods in the car and we'd go, just driving around the bays in Wellington and, come across, it's called a workup. The birds are diving and we'd catch some fish and have a barbecue or have dinner, and it was a good time,
It's obviously a passion of yours, and the fact that Logan's got under your skin about the chat is indicative of that. I think it also speaks to, you just got a moment there for the audience at home about how you react on the field sometimes as well, which I always appreciate. But coming to the fishing, is there kind of like a cathartic or therapeutic element to it where you just get out on the boat, you're away from everybody, you're away from football, and it's just you out there fishing, perhaps with a couple of mates?
To be fair, it's something that my family has always loved and always done. My dad loved fishing, Winton loved fishing, so whenever we had family holidays or time together, we did a lot of fishing. So it's something that since a real young age I've always loved, always enjoyed to do. And I suppose obviously there's the enjoyment factor, but as I progressed into a professional footballer, it actually became not just something I enjoyed to do, but like you said, actually something that took my mind away from football and the pressures of that, and something that I found or find really helpful.
Do you do it from a boat or do you jet
Dock.
ski?
Oh, jet ski. Don't tell me you're one of the jet ski guys.
Yeah. I am not one of the jet ski lads. Those boys were crazy on those things, but no, I'm more of a boat fisherman. But for a long time, I did a lot of fishing from land, land-based fishing, and had a lot of fun. So yeah, land-based and boat. So yeah.
Yeah, Bawley was telling us about how Stephen Taylor was wearing his fresh pair of Nike trainers on the jet ski, and then he went in the drink. I mean, yeah.
So you were
did you watch them in action from the shore or what?
You were staying with Tails, right? And you never went out on the jet ski?
I went out on the jet skis with the boys a couple times. I can't remember why or when. I think one of the boys weren't around for the weekend, so I used their jet ski when I was staying with Tails, and we all went out together, mate. Those guys are just madmen. They used to just go full tilt and just try and hit each other or try and splash waves to hit them off. And I went out for an afternoon with Bawley and Stevie, and I just stayed as close to the shore as possible because I knew they wouldn't come near me because they were just madmen. But yeah,
so
no,
three of the Phoenix's more expensive players, shall we say,
putting themselves in grave danger.
Yeah. Trying to play bumper boats with jet skis at about a 60 to 100 k's an hour, whatever it might be.
There was a pretty funny video. One of the boys was living on top of, I think it was like Miramar Hill, looking down into Evans Bay, and saw three lads on jet skis. One lad had fallen off. I think it was Stevie, and the two others, Hoops and Bawley, were just hooning around him and making it impossible for him to get up onto the jet ski.
That's the Orca Day. Yeah. That's the. That must have been the Orca Day where he's gone 10 feet in the air.
I think that was a different day. So that was a different day out in Breaker Bay. So there was a lot of stories that came out with those lads, and honestly, the carnage that unfolded with those three was, but that was a good laugh. Oh, another thing that a lot of us do down here, and I'm sure a lot of boys and a lot of teams do, is golf, obviously, and played with spoons a couple of times. But golf's a funny one because I'm obviously not too flash, and then it ends up being more of a negative experience, and it makes me feel pretty bad going home. But that's just more of a laugh with the lads. So yeah.
That's where Roofs and I, it's really important that we play together because
you're both as bad as one another.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we get this little, nice competition going. Ollie can hit his 250, 260 metre drives, and me and Roofs are out in the rough just looking for stuff, having a nice chat. Hey, Roofs, kind of zigzagging back and forth across the golf course.
Yep, exactly. We're lucky Ollie's patient and he likes us, because otherwise, yeah, that would be a painful day for him.
Well, the worst thing he could have done is play golf with Ben Old. He was the next big thing in terms of golf. He was a golfing prodigy, and he's still very bloody good at golf today. What would it be like, you guys playing up against Ben Old? Surely a horrific experience.
We, now that we're on Golf Chat, we used to play some pretty good games. We'd, when we relocated to Sydney and Chatswood, we used to do like 2v2s all the time, and there were so many of us that played. And Oldie obviously was a very, very good golfer, and he would play with, David Ball, and I was paired up with Hoops all the time. And
this is the story that Oldie was talking about, actually. This is the one.
Here we go. Yeah, and a lot of times the boys would get so angry with me because, for majority of the day I would be shanking balls left and right, and the boys would be laughing at me.
I remember this one.
Yeah.
The boys would be laughing at me, taking the piss out of me, and I was getting so annoyed. But then, more often than not, it would come down to my shot to like win us the game or draw or whatever, and I'd always somehow just come up clutch. And I nearly lost Ollie and James McGarry as mates, purely because I couldn't hit the ball to save myself this one day, and I'd only just started. And there was a par 3, and it was about 150 metres, and I've used the driver, and I've put it about 3 foot from the hole. I've put it 3 foot from the hole, and Ollie just looked at me and just went, you are not my mate, and just walked off. And I was like happy with the shot, and Gary Hooper's going, well done, mate, you just won us the game. And I'm just kind of standing there going, crap, I've just lost 2 mates because of what I've just done. But, yeah.
You've represented the nation playing football. You've done great things for the Phoenix. Was this the greatest sporting moment of your life, Alex Rufer?
It was, it was definitely close. I have to say, catching my first kingfish off the rocks, I think probably beats it. But it was close. It was very close.
So good.
Great. Hey, we're supposed to talk about a penalty. I think we got sidetracked from the
Which penalty was that?
Do we
the
have
one
to?
from last... Oh, mate, please. I think this is important to let everyone at home know what that experience is like, because I was genuinely gutted for you. Like, it was a great game of football. I think 2 things about this: the responsibility in the moment and why you stepped up, and then 2, just how you felt on the back end of that, because I think that's important for people to understand today, because there would be a dressing room full of Auckland FC lads on the weekend that were heartbroken, and an insight into that is invaluable for people at home, because a lot of them will have experienced it, but not at the scale and under the spotlight that you have.
I felt during that year, just in general, and I still do, but I felt like I thrived under that responsibility, and I wanted to take responsibility more, and I felt definitely that season especially, I felt like I was extremely comfortable taking more responsibility, and I wanted it. We'd obviously drawn the game beforehand in Melbourne, which was a good result. Of course, we wanted to win. And then, I didn't think twice about the penalty, and the goalkeeper saved it, and obviously, unfortunately, that can happen. And obviously, again, going back to what we spoke about, next training, next game, my initial thought was obviously disappointment, but I had to quickly switch. My thinking and my mindset was straight away, well, next action. And to be honest, that was something I was proud about, was how I responded afterwards. I just got on with it, and it probably wasn't until after the game when your adrenaline wears off and the emotion kind of is there, is when it really, really sunk in that I felt as if I'd lost the team the game. It was difficult.
Fair enough, you felt it that way, but absolutely no chance that's the case at all.
Speaking of the difficulty that comes with a moment like that, Roofs, the relationship that you've had with the fans over the years, it has been tenuous at times. We've spoken about this before. I remember on the old Kiwi football fix, it almost took a while for the fans to really almost buy into you and believe in what you had to offer. And then when moments like this take place, where you're the one to step up and it leads to disappointment, does that sort of play on your mind a little bit?
To be honest, of course, look, it hurts, but that's not I never think negatively. I think if you think like that first, I think then it's obviously a recipe for failure, or recipe for something negative to happen. But obviously, the first thing that crossed my mind was, well, I've let my teammates down, and that was quite hurtful. It's obviously not something that you want. And then obviously again as well the fans, but I felt as if after the game the reception that we got from the fans and even me personally was a positive one, and I of course would I've liked to have scored and given them a better moment, yes, but I also think what an occasion it was, and something that a lot of people will look back on, and hopefully we can get there again and do one better.
I mean, he was just teeing up Oscar Zavada for a 99th minute
equaliser.
I think that was very
maybe
selfless.
We don't have that moment.
But can we talk about it? Because it's so, what was the... Okay, so we've got the feeling of the penalty, and then Traore scores. There's literally seconds left. At what moment do you realise there's a chance for a goal here?
I always felt, we were always dangerous and could score. And then obviously Zavada being Zavada, comes on and, does that. That was, a pretty special moment, and, something that was a very, very, crazy feeling. Crazy feeling.
It was crazy being on the sideline, because as the clock was ticking down, my job was to then enter the field of play and try and have a chat with you about, oh wow, we've just lost this tie. And so what the thoughts were running through my head, what am I going to ask Roofs? And then that happens and all hell breaks loose. This guy and Piney forget to throw down to me and Ives to fill the gap between the end of the game and extra time. I know, we're going to go through this again. And it just turned into this chaotic moment. How was it in terms of being able to compose you and the team?
Yes, that's a great question.
To make sure that you approach the extra time period in the right manner?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Like it's something that I think we did quite well throughout that year. We got to a stage I felt where if something negative happened, we'd always show a positive response. But then if something like that happened where we scored late or we scored a very important goal where, yes, we were all very happy or there was a lot of emotion, but, again, your thought has to then be, right, that's happened and it's now next action and what's my job? So that was pretty much what we were speaking about. We made, I can't remember exactly what changes we made in terms of tactically, but, we were in that huddle and everyone was extremely focused, and, I can tell you now every single player in that huddle thought we would win the game, and it's a credit to Melbourne Victory because they won the game, and fair play to them because they were a very, very good team.
Were my questions any good throughout the season? Because sometimes I felt like I wasn't getting much out of you, and I wondered if you even liked me at one point, Roofs. Were the questions okay?
Give him some feedback here. What would
a
Shane
bit of
say?
constructive
What would
criticism.
Shane say?
I've heard that you think I don't like you. I don't know.
He's put it in my head, mate. He's put it in my head that
I
you
love
don't actually
watching
like
them.
me.
So, Bruce, in context, mate, I've got the headphones in and I'm walking down from commentary to go down back to the panel, and I can hear the interview going on. And especially if you've drawn or lost, and I can hear how salty you are, and he's getting the brunt of it. It's beautiful television.
Look, I apologize. I apologize if you felt like that. I suppose especially if it is after a poor result or something like that. It's definitely nothing aimed at you. It's just probably more my emotions. But no, I don't have any problems with you unless you've got a problem with me. So yeah.
No, I've never had a problem with you, mate. I've never had a problem with you. Yeah, but I think ultimately it did cost me my job because I wasn't getting enough out of you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So it's my fault. All right.
That was brilliant.
No, to be honest,
I don't have
mate,
a problem with you if you don't have a problem with me. First off, fantastic. And then you cost me my job. Okay. Mwah.
Yeah, we're all having fun here, mate. But if I can be serious for a moment, Roofs, and I don't give out praise easily. I haven't praised Jacob in the 5 or 6 years that we've known each other, but your form in the previous season, you were the best defensive midfielder in the A-League competition, bar none. And I stand by that. And, you know, I was so proud of you, the way that you conducted yourself throughout that campaign, not only as a player, but as a captain. And at the end of the season, I've got to admit, I was shocked that you hung around when you see the likes of Oldie and Finn and AP get these deals. Hand on heart, mate, I thought that you would be snapped up by somebody. Can you tell us about what happened in the off-season and if there were any approaches at all for someone offshore to take you away from the Phoenix, because your form warranted an offshore contract?
Oh, I appreciate those words. No, look, I was, like I said, everything happens pretty quickly. You know, you think you're going into your off season, and I was straight on the plane pretty much to Vanuatu for the OFC Nations Cup. And yes, there's always chat. There's always agents. There's always things that are going on in the background. But I was just so focused and enjoying my football so much that I wasn't really giving it too much time. You know, I was just so focused on making sure I played well because, that's the best way for you to get a move is to perform, play well, and that kind of gets taken care of itself. And I think the biggest difference, those boys are obviously a lot younger and there's a lot more potential for them to grow. And I'm not saying I'm old, but, you know, I'm at an age where a lot of clubs are probably not looking for someone at my age. And again, I'm not old, but that's just the way football's gone. And I do still want to, try and play overseas, but, I need to have another good year and hopefully, have a good year and go to the World Cup and then see what happens.
Just write that down, Alex Rufer, not old. Got that?
Yeah, well, hang on. For the record, how old are you, Roofs?
I'm 28.
Yeah, that's not old. Jeez. You've got Chris Wood in the English Premier League, banging in goals, 20 goals for Forest, narrowly missing out on Champions League football this week.
It's been a bad weekend, hasn't it?
Mate, you've got 5, 6, 7 years of offshore football ahead of you.
Or if your costs are potentially longer.
Yeah.
Hopefully, fingers, touch wood.
Can you give an indication to people at home the frequency of the suggestion of interest and then how many times it does kind of pop up throughout the course of a season? Because it happens probably more regularly than people realise. They only ever get the tip of the iceberg, though.
Oh, look, it's something that probably happens. Obviously, every player's different, but, it probably happens to most players at least once during a season, especially, the players that are performing and doing extremely well. It's probably something that they're dealing with weekly. But again, I'm sure like players like, AP when he left the Phoenix and Oldie and Finn, players like that, young players that are, performing and doing extremely well. I'm sure that, for players like them, it was something that was happening all the time. And again, that's something that, hats off to them for dealing with and still being able to perform, because it's something that, can take your focus away from what you have to do on the weekend. So that's something that impressed me about all three of them, was that although there was a lot of noise about them going here, there and everywhere and agents and this and that, they still managed to, push that to the side and worry about what was the most important thing, and that was performing on the weekend.
AP was going here, there and everywhere at the weekend, mate. He charged out on the angle there and tried to get involved in a bit of argy-bargy. You know Alex Paulson quite well, given his time with the Wellington Phoenix. Was that out of character, what he did at the weekend? And was that kind of a result of the pressure that he may have been feeling in that moment?
It was definitely something that, it didn't surprise me because, look, the game, when you're in the game, heat of the moment, things can happen. It did surprise me a little bit just because, obviously, I don't think he did that with us. But, again, big occasion, a lot of pressure, a lot of expectation. And he was just protecting his teammates. So, to be honest, I don't see why there was a problem with it. Obviously, you have to be careful. And an occasion like that, people can get carried away. But I think he was just trying to support his teammate. And fair enough to him.
I haven't seen a goalkeeper charge out on the angle like that
Jesus Christ.
since one Jacob Spoonley.
Pull the headphones out. Chris. You don't need to listen to this.
You don't want to relitigate the Hawke's Bay nightmare?
No. But coming back to the AP point, because in commentary I said, perhaps I could have changed it slightly. It was a coming of age moment. What I really was saying is that this is the evolution of Alex Paulson. Last year he was, I think, still adjusting to professional football and differential to people like yourself around managing those moments. In the weekend, Marley Francois he'd been collared by Machash, and he's really good mates with AP, and there weren't too many other Auckland players around. So I think AP's realised in the moment, all right, cool, I need to go draw a line here, or we do as a team. I'm the nearest, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to back up my mate. I liked that. That's an established A-League star in Zinedine Machash, also physically imposing. And AP's decided to go out, and then Bruno Fornaroli's grabbed him. He's turned around and he's said, no, I'm not taking any backward steps. And then Roderick Miranda's got involved as well. So you've got AP in and amongst these three established A-League stars, all of which have played at a high level and done things overseas. I like that. It was an evolution of AP. It was the competitor that sits underneath the nice kid. And I appreciated what he was doing in the moment for his teammates.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's a great player. He's a great lad, like you said. And, fair play to him. He's protecting his teammates. And, in a big occasion like that, he was making sure that, his teammate, his friend, was, felt protected and felt like he had his back. So, good on him.
You mentioned one of the characters that he was up against in that melee was Zinedine Machash, and whenever Roofs and Machash go at it, it is box office. It's, get the popcorn out, sit down, we're in for a time here. It's going to be a beauty. Trying to nullify not only the physicality, but the delicate nature with which he approaches the game as well, because he is so technically adept with his feet.
Guile as well.
Yeah, look, he's very strong, very physical, and he's also very good in open space when he turns and if he has space and driving at players and defenders. And, you can expect that for 90 minutes. So I always felt whenever I played him to try and get close to him as close to him as possible and try to stop him from turning or facing forward. Obviously, you can't stop it every time, but, he's a very, very good player and, he did very well in the weekend and scored a nice goal and, he really stood up for victory. So he's done very, very well.
Do you look forward to playing those sorts of players?
Of course, I've always looked forward to playing, the best players and all the biggest games, the best players, the best teams. And, he's someone that's definitely, since he's come, I've always felt that we've had a really good battle and a really good, bring the best out of each other, I feel. He's always made me play better and, the games that we have played, like I said, I always feel, coming off the field, it's been a good challenge.
If he's brought the best out of you, who has made you feel the smallest? Who's belittled you on the field where you've gone, oh, geez, I'm really embarrassed about my performance that day?
Shane.
No, not in the backyard. Not in the backyard over Christmas, but like a professional encounter where you've gone, far out, that guy absolutely stuffed me.
Oh, I remember one game in particular at Westpac when I think it was 2016 or 2017 we versed Sydney, and I think they were obviously winning the league. They had an amazing team, and I was playing holding midfield or centre midfield, and both their number 10s was Ninkovic and Mierzejewski, the Polish
he got
number
the MVP
10.
The one season he played.
And then they had, Brosk and Bobo. So I remember, obviously, it was one of my first starts of that season, and I hadn't really had many opportunities before that. So obviously, going into the game, I was extremely pumped up and ready to, try and stake a claim for a starting spot. And although, I didn't feel like I played badly, but I just remember feeling, because we hardly had the ball, that, wow, these guys are just, I felt at the time, this team is head and shoulders above us. And they beat us 4-2 that day. And, those two in particular were very, very difficult to try and get close to that day, which was, it was a tough day, that one.
I'm just thinking about Mijieski and Ninkovic in the 2-10 roles, mate. That must have been hellish. They would have just been popping up left and right, much like Bruno did to Dan Hall and Nando on the weekend. But is it physically fatiguing or is it mentally fatiguing when you're coming up against players like that?
Well, it was also quite an interesting period for me personally because, this was obviously a while ago, so I was still, I was a lot younger, and I was actually still learning how to play or just trying to find my feet as a defensive midfielder, because prior to that I'd played in, number 10 or as an attacking player. So I wasn't really used as a defensive player. And then to be thrown in that day and it was late notice too, which shocked me a little bit. I was just thrown in the deep end, which, in some ways is a good thing. But I just remember feeling like whenever I got close to one of them, the other one was there and he was getting the ball and turning, and then vice versa. If I didn't go, they were turning, and it was just very difficult because they're so smart, and it was a big learning curve. And you learn a lot from those occasions, especially as a youngster, like I said, trying to find my way in that position. And something that made me learn a lot.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing that would make me want to get an office job. I'd just be like, that's it, I'm done. These guys are way too good, and I'll never get to that level.
You do have moments like that where you're like, I'm in the wrong career. Yeah.
The worst one, sorry to interrupt, but the worst one actually, now that I think about it, was the Under-17 World Cup, where we had Italy, Uruguay, and Ivory Coast in our group. And we'd lost the first two games 7-0 to Uruguay, 1-0 to Italy, which was a very close game. And then we versed Ivory Coast. And I remember standing in the tunnel before the game, and obviously we were all extremely motivated and jacked up for the game. And then seeing them come out, the Ivory Coast players, led by Frank Kessie, and he's played at Barcelona. I think he's at Al Hilal now. And just the sheer size of those boys, when they came out, we were all just these little, 16, 17-year-olds from New Zealand, and just looking at them and thinking, wow, these guys are so far superior physically superior than us. And we got out there and they just ran rings around us for 90 minutes. And I remember coming off that field and just being a little bit embarrassed. So that was probably the worst one in terms of an actual game.
We've got a wee way into this podcast, mate. We haven't talked about this season. Really,
no, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's have a chat about this season and the opportunity to hear from the Wellington Phoenix skipper and to put your take out there into the world as to why things didn't go according to plan, I think is a wonderful opportunity. Roofs, in your own words, why the drop-off between seasons?
Oh, look, it's the million-dollar question. Look, it's obviously there's pressure when, having to back up the season before. Although we didn't win anything, there's always a little bit of added pressure. I think we started okay this season, and I think, having the games against Auckland initially that early were, such exciting games, and I think those were big games that we lost, especially early, and I think that potentially had a little bit of a negative effect on us as a group. Not to say that that's a reason why we didn't finish where we wanted to finish, but I just think we made a lot of costly errors that we were punished on that we hadn't made in the prior year, where we were very, very solid. We didn't really give teams many opportunities, and I think unfortunately this year we made a bad habit of making some poor errors, and teams punished us for it. I think we had a little bit of a disjointed few months where there was a few injuries and sickness, which never helps. But again, that's just excuses. I think when push comes to shove, we weren't good enough when it really counted, and that was on the weekend for 90 minutes. But look, I think it's as difficult as it was this season, as tough it was to take. I think it's been a great learning curve for everyone involved, and I'm confident and I'm optimistic that next season will be better.
You mentioned sickness, and sickness happened to you. How bad was your illness, and we've heard stories about how it was misdiagnosed in the early stages, and you thought, well, I'll just run through it, and it wasn't the case. And then we didn't see you on field for, what was it, something like 50 days. So what were you actually going through, and when did it start to get better?
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy time, to be honest. So I'd started to feel sick or feel just unwell, generally unwell in December. I think it was the week after the Auckland game, so in December. So we'd lost that game 2-1, and I'm pretty sure it was the week following that I had like fever and just sort of that sort of cold flu symptoms and some body aches, things like that. And I still trained and thought I'd get better, played the game, and I remember that first game I was thinking, I'm not feeling great, but hopefully next week's better. I got a blood test, and the blood test came back, like you said, it was negative for anything in particular. It just said that the blood results kind of indicated that I had some form of virus, but there was nothing saying like it was glandular fever. And then played another game against Western Sydney, I think it was, and it was a lot hotter that day. And I remember really struggling that day and feeling like, that was not easy. And like in terms of my condition, like I was feeling a lot worse. I again had probably a week of sort of coldy, flu-y symptoms. And then we had, I think, 3 days off or 2 days off where we went home for Christmas and things like that. And so I went home to Christmas, and I remember my mum said to me, "Jesus, you've lost a lot of weight." And I remember that was really when it really like kind of hit home, and I was like, maybe I have. And so I weighed myself, and I'd lost, I think, 4 kilos or something like that. And I was quite surprised because at the time, you don't really think about that sort of thing too much. And I tried to eat as much Christmas ham as I could to try and put some weight on, because she said that, and I was a little bit rattled. But then, it was...
Everyone's out in the backyard playing the football, and you're
just hoovering ham.
fourth serving of ham.
So that happened, and then we played Newcastle towards the end of December, and I hadn't been training, but I'd seen a doctor again, and it was similar sort of advice. It was, obviously, everyone was trying to do the best they could for me, and I said again I wanted to play, and I played and we won. And then, post that game, I remember just feeling absolutely like finished. I just had no energy. I was completely done, and I just had to say, I just called the doctor again and said, no, I need another blood test. And then sure enough, the day later, I had glandular fever, and we just handled it from there. I didn't train for a good 5 weeks, I think it was. 4 or 5 weeks. And I was just trying to grind through every day and keep myself sane, although it wasn't easy. And then slowly but surely got better and better, and then could increase my training and got back. So, it definitely wasn't a fun time.
No. Roofs, how frustrating was it having to sit out that period? Because like you said, you'd gone from having a good start to the season, which I think a lot of people forget at this point. There's the 2 emotionally draining losses against Auckland, and then there's the period of 3 to 4 games where the mistakes just came, and they came quickly in games, and like you said, you got punished for them. And then you're not there to help with, I suppose at this point, the rebuilding of the season as the skipper. That must be incredibly frustrating, sitting on literally the couch having to watch things.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely extremely frustrating, and something that, it's very difficult to do. Like you said, we were kind of in that sort of period of like a little bit of a downward spiral where we, almost felt like, we'd make one mistake and get punished for it, and so on and so forth. And it's very difficult to get yourselves out of that. Once that happened and I was watching from the sideline, there wasn't much I could do. I was quite removed because I wasn't in that training. I wasn't seeing any of the players. I was just trying to, speak to them a little bit when I could. It was extremely difficult, but something that I think, players did step up as well. I think, Scotty, Costa and Payne were were good during that period. I think Payne missed a little bit too, but when he came back, they all, led by example, which you expect from those players. But yeah, it was definitely not an easy time, and definitely something that I do not want to go through again.
Bruce, you talked about change in your last post-match interview. Is there anything else that you would like to give Phoenix fans the detail of that change that you've got in your mind at the moment about next season?
Oh, look, again, it's something difficult to kind of explain. I think it's, there's not just one thing. I think, again, we need to, as a group, when we come back in, we need to assess what happened last season, or have a brief look at why we finished where we did, what went well, what didn't go well. I think we need to be accountable, and I think a big indication or a big difference this season is, Chiefy gets to now sign all his staff again, and hopefully bring in some new players as well, which hopefully all fit into what he wants to do. And I think moving forward, I think that's extremely exciting, and the fans, should also be excited. I think, yes, it was a negative year, and a negative year after such a good year, but there's no reason why it won't be as good as it was the year before. So be optimistic and be positive. I think we all believe that we'll be better next season. So let's see what happens.
Starting 11.
And here's your starting 11.
Okay, Alex Rufer, where is the worst ground that you've had to travel to?
What's the field in Honiara we play with the national team?
Freshwater?
Yeah, I think it's that one. Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah.
Freshwater Stadium. What is your pre-match meal?
Spaghetti bolognese.
Any cheese?
Yeah, heaps of Parmesan. The boys hammer me because I go hard on it.
Who is your All Whites roommate?
Logan Rogerson.
Dangerous combination. Now, importantly, what is your golf handicap?
Officially, it's 21, but that is very generous.
I got into the bad habit of only recording my good scores, Roofs, and so my handicap is a lot lower than it should be because I just give up halfway through if I'm having a bad round. I've heard that someone connected with the pod, their father-in-law only records the bad scores.
Well, I'm similar to you. I made that mistake, and it's definitely not helped me out.
Where's the place that you want to go back to after you've finished playing to visit properly?
Japan. I did a big tour when I was a lot younger. I was about 15 when I did this football tour with my dad, and we went to a few places, Tokyo, all the sort of main cities. And I just remember the food was amazing, and I really enjoyed. Obviously, we trained there as well, and trained with some of the teams, and I just wouldn't mind watching some of the football there. And I've also heard it's pretty good fishing, so I wouldn't mind giving that a crack over there too.
What was the first club that you played for?
First club I played for was Ruahine AFC in Palmerston North.
Palmerston North
Another
End, right here.
Palmy North.
Yeah. No, we're taking over, mate.
Jesus.
Palmerston North End. Big
You,
club.
Roofs,
Big club. Greeny.
Jake Gleeson, right?
Greeny.
Yeah, far out.
Yep.
Everywhere.
I know. Infestation.
Why don't you stay there, though, eh?
Oh, are you going to take that line down, Russ?
To be fair, I wasn't born there. I was born in Switzerland,
Okay.
so I'm a little bit different
Yeah.
to you, Spoon.
He's
Yeah,
very
right.
cosmopolitan. Ngāti Porou, born in Geneva. Is that right, Roofs?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's me.
Confuses a lot of people, especially when you with the blonde hair and the blue eyes. Favourite non-footballing athlete?
Tiger Woods.
The movie that you want to go back to and watch for the first time?
Gladiator.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah.
In your top 5?
Nah. But my top 5 is Crook. You know, I've got Hot Tub Time Machine in mind. It's a classic. How it didn't win an Oscar that year, I'll never know.
I'm not sure its Rotten Tomatoes score gets above, gets into double digits. The team you supported growing up, Roofs?
Manchester United.
Oh, yeah, get it out of here. Worst injury?
I had a spiral fracture so I broke my ankle and leg, but it was a spiral fracture up my leg, and I had 2 surgeries, and the first surgery I had external fixations, so the metal was all through my leg, and just holding it in place for about a week, maybe 10 days before I had surgery. That was pretty brutal. And then I had a big plate and 7 rods or 8 rods put in. That was a bad one, yeah.
Finishing positive, coffee order.
Flat white.
Yes, patriotic. Very good.
And here's your starting 11.
Awesome to have your company on the Unused Subs, mate. And the most pleasing thing for me is that we're actually still friends. And
I think you're now friends, is how I.
Well, no. I think we were always mates. We were always on good terms, and now that's been confirmed. So that's brilliant.
I'd heard a few whispers that you weren't sure if I liked you or not, but honestly, no. That's there's no issues. I wouldn't be on the podcast if I didn't like you, mate. So there's no worries
I
there.
thought maybe your love for Spoon sort of outweighed the hatred for me, and that's why you were here.
I wouldn't. No.
I
wouldn't bank on that, because Spoon, the amount of times that he calls me and just does more harm than good. This guy, I'm sure.
Over the last year and a half, not being able to get down to see my favourite team, Wellington Phoenix, play in the A-League and have chats with you, it's one of my great disappointments, I've got to say. Who knows, maybe the worm will turn at some point and we'll be able to have more conversations, but I'd like to go glass half full than empty and say I was glad to have had those opportunities in the first place, mate, than to not have had them at all.
Now that I've got you, I remember we did a promo in Auckland at, I think it was Spark, and you took the piss out of me. You mentioned you had, I didn't really know you at the time, and you made a joke about me in front of everyone, and I remember leaving thinking, who the F is this guy? I was a bit annoyed, and then I can't remember who. I think I actually may have spoken to Spoons about it or someone, and he had your back. So that
wasn't me.
No hard feelings.
But I was also taking the piss out of Scott Wootton as well. So I called him the Tower of Power. So
yes, that's right. I think I took it a little bit personally, because I think I just came back from my knee injury maybe or something. I can't remember, but I remember thinking, oh, this guy's trying to kick me when I'm down, man. What's going on here? But I took it like a pussy, so it's all good.
Yeah, all these years after the fact, I'm sorry, Roofs, but it came from a place of love, mate.
No problem at all. Like I said to you before, the amount of times that Spoons calls me and talks to me about absolutely nothing, and he tells me that is from a place of love too, so all good.
What's going on? I thought we were reconciling. We were coming together, and I've come in for a stray one.
I'm still
Let's finish this before you keep. Don't you do you?
Hang on, wait. He's got something left to say.
I'm still disappointed you've not taken me out on the boat, mate.
Well, there is a certain special lady that you need to take care of at the moment, so we'll definitely make this happen. There might be more than one Croatian on the boat that day, depending on how G goes.
So I get an invite.
Oh, well, yeah. Hey. You have to ask Alex.
No problem. Nah, all good.